I'm almost done with my Genoa. It's been quite a lot of work. And that's actually what I've been doing the last weeks between editing videos and staying inside, cover for the rain. It's rain season and it's been quite a lot of not so nice weather, so that's why I also made these videos. I know that some have found my last thumbnails and titles a bit provocative, but I think it's a good thing because it has created a lot of good discussions and also created a lot of engagement for my channel, which is also very good. And I'm not gonna lie, it also works better than me in a bikini, due to the fact there are so many beautiful ladies that could pull off the teasing part much better, offering you the grapes for clicks. I'm not surprised that people are offended because there's so many getting so easy offended nowadays, but I'm not offended. If you want to call me motor sailor or motorboat with a mast, fine, I don't really care. Instead, I'm gonna share some engine-powered tricks that for many could be the difference from staying afloat versus observing their home disappearing sitting in a life raft. I will also bust some myths about real sailors and why ancient sailors belongs on museums and not as reference of today's standard. Most people would agree calling out things that could put sailors' lives at risk is a good thing.
I think that you have people who don't have a clue about what they're doing, or people who just don't give a bleep about what happens to their customers.
So why should I not also use my decades of sailing experience and even professional training to call out false statements? It's a big difference between opinions in designs, what your preferences are in type of yachts, or even size. End of the day, this comes down to subjective opinions, often based on the perspective. Some would claim this is how to understand sailing, but in fact it's only someone not paying attention to evolution. Sailing yachts such as trimarans can sail straight into the so-called no-go zone, so it depends on your perspective if your statement is true or false. Yes, you guessed it, this dinghy I'm out sailing here is a Rapido 60, exact same as the famous La Vagabond. I was pretty surprised to see their video after some asked me if I could comment it for a magazine. I normally don't comment accidents, and instead I will share my best practice, how I use equipments and technology to avoid it as part of my statements about evolution. What was considered as good seamanship 20 years ago is not even close to be valid today, and that's because seamanship evolves over time. Meaning, for your own safety, make sure your references comes from sailors having a higher standard, and not listen to romantic dreamers listing up ancient sailors. That's totally irrelevant. And from my point of view, this kind of attitude and strong opinions is not only false, it's basically defending stupid. I'm aware that I'm not the best role model, and I'm gonna explain more further out here. But I'm also transparent about it, and I'm not defending it, and I'm gonna explain why and how I do to minimize the risk. Join me as I'm sailing around the world on Be Free, a Bavaria 55 cruiser. I don't think it's so interesting for you to watch my video stitching with Thomas minute by minute, so that's why I have not bothered you too much with it, and that's also the reason why I made this series of videos. Just to set things straight from the beginning, I've never claimed to be the best ambassador for offshore sailing. And the obvious reason is because I often do this solo. And I would dare to say absolutely no solo sailor is a good example. This is among the reasons I've been transparent that I'm violating one of the most important rules in the maritime regulation myself. Even the most skilled sailor need to sleep to keep the biggest danger on an arm-length distance. I'm talking about fatigue, meaning I cannot keep a sharp lookout at all time. With technology and in combination with my sleeping pattern, I tried to do my best minimizing this risk. But the risk is still there. The key to safe offshore sailing is to make sure you have the margins on your side. Notice how my life raft is angled and ready to go, and where my EPIRB is located during offshore sailing to be as efficient as possible. A tender do not double as a life raft and should be an entire video in itself. But please trust me, channels promoting this are not to take serious. You cannot criticize sailors going offshore without one before mid-80s or even early 90s. Basically because it was not yet available for private use. But it does not mean they were better sailors, right? What do you think about my new life raft?
I think you'd be definitely picked up.
I think so too. Going offshore without a life raft today, when it's considered as standard safety equipment, is poor seamanship and not very intelligent. It means your safety standard is not up to date. What worked only 30 years ago is not even valid today, and good seamanship is to adapt to technology as well as implementing good routines. Like I showed earlier, talking about how I utilize Starlink to plan and prepare ahead, only to increase my margins and reduce the risks being a solo sailor violating the rule number 1, keeping a sharp lookout at all time. I believe removing one element not only takes one safety option away, but increase the risk at the other side of the safety equation. Meaning statements like this are not only exposing dangerous and outdated mindset, it's defending stupid. I'm absolutely not saying La Vagabond are stupid, because shit happens. And as I said in the beginning, I normally do not comment on accidents. But instead I would like to share my best practice. I was once anchored in a legal place in the Caribbean, and suddenly I had a big ferry passing me uncomfortable close at night. Knowing I'm mostly sailing solo, I decided to add some spreader lights. Not so much for work on deck at night, but mostly because I was going to Asia, where I am right now. A region famous for massive amount of fishing boats that mostly works at night. And in this region, not so many pleasure boats sitting at anchor. So with extra lights I added safety not only for my offshore sailing, but also for my time at anchor. Very simplified, you can say it's a major difference being anchored inside a tiny bay versus being anchored outside. The risk for being run over is much higher, especially if there is no other boats at anchor around you. If I have to anchor in a bit illogical place or where there is no other yachts, I light up my yacht as a Christmas tree, because sometimes it can be hard to see my mast headlight 25 meters up, especially if there's backlight from houses on shore. So if I know I'm a bit exposed, I even turn the power up so much you will see me very well in a good distance. I'm pretty sure most sailors know sitting dark comes with a risk. But my experience is that sometimes the masthead light alone is not enough. So I dare to claim adding lights reduce the risk for being run over sitting at anchor. You can go without it, but it for sure adds to your anchor safety in remote places, allowing you to not go into a port that might be a better alternative. Not many private sailors thinks about this, but organizing a night watch schedule, having a crew, can sometimes be a good thing, even sitting at anchor. Sometimes even as a solo sailor this might be required. I decided to stay in my cockpit the entire night, so I did my 20-minute shift solution as if I was out sailing. Any sailor claiming they never had a close call at some point are either not aware of it or they are basically not honest. I've had a few close calls, but I've been lucky. This is among some of the reasons why it's very hard for a solo sailor to qualify for insurance. So please don't be a waffy, the most common expression when a commercial officer identify a sailor at sea. I can reveal that waffy means wind-assisted idiot. Trust me, some of us deserves this nickname. I asked my son yesterday if he could make a short video only to show you how his view looks like today, with his endless row of 55 inches screens on his commercial offshore ship in the North Sea. Claiming old sailors were so much better than today's seafarers are just foolish. Even a 200-ton captain's license used in the yachting industry is not much compared to a Class 1 officer with a commercial captain's education. It's a huge difference. You can compare it with a Cessna pilot and a commercial Airbus pilot. Only to put things in perspective. And to compare ancient sailors towards today is even worse than comparing pilots only 120 years back. In fact, a commercial ship captain's education is longer than becoming a commercial airline captain. It's even plausible an average sailor knows more today than all these pioneers together. Some are very impressed by sailors going without engines, claiming they are the real sailors. Sorry to break this illusion, because sailing without engine is not that extraordinary. In fact, many of us have been racing various range of yachts without engines several times a week for years. When I was 7 years old, I managed to sail without engine. Was this because I was a real sailor, or basically because I had no other options? Many old sailors have spectacular histories and definitely big adventures behind them, but hopefully you understand many of those belong on museum and not as reference for today's standard. The difference between experienced and inexperienced sailors of today is not whether they can use a sextant or not. I happen to have education in using a sextant for celestial navigation. I even have an updated almanac on board and do play with this quite frequently. But it's not very accurate and in fact useless for coastal navigation, not to forget when it's fog, rain or really bad weather. Claiming ancient sailors were better navigators is nothing but a false statement and romantic illusions about captains that in reality did not have other options, often sailing happy-go-lucky due to the physical limitations as the nature of their tools. In fact, every commercial captain have been forced to learn outdated navigation methods until most recently, more like an exotic idea about keeping it alive than any practical value. Thankfully, evolution have given us not only GPS but even plotters and radars as well. A good captain adapting to modern technology is proof of good seamanship, but the inexperienced would not play with the same margins. It's totally possible to sail engineless. However, on offshore sailing, I stand behind my previous video, calling it not very smart. Some are lucky and some are not. And as I said, a solid engine with a great range made it possible for my neighbor to reach this anchorage. But I have even more strong arguments for powerful and reliable engine on board. And that's my alternator can power 5 pumps with a total capacity of 4,000 liter water per hour. I also have a hose with a rapid connector and a valve to reroute the raw water on my main engine, and this can increase my bilge pump capacity with 600 to 900 liter water per hour, depending on the RPM. If that's not enough, I can even start up my generator, that I can run several 220 pumps, but at the moment I have only one with impressive 2400 liter per hour in capacity, meaning as of today I have a water pump capacity of 7300 liter water per hour. And with my attitude towards carrying diesel on my passages, I can run this water pump capacity of 7,300 liter per hour for 10 days non-stop and even make way towards either assistance or land somewhere. I'm pretty confident many sailors would have time to make some temporary fix stopping their leaks if they knew about this. Another aspect for sailors without sufficient engine capacity is you are a useless resource for others in need. In fact, it's more often than you would think sailors are asked to change course, participating in search for a man overboard, or assist in other ways. I have been requested a few times to participate by officials, and it's not always they just say keep a sharp lookout on your way. 2 times I've been given coordinates and requests to do parallel search between ships, also participating. If I did not have engine, I would be a useless resource. More important is for your own and your crew's safety, and this is a point I believe many are missing out on. If you fall overboard as a solo sailor mid-ocean, it doesn't really matter if you have engine or not, nor how much capacity you have on your engine. most likely you are never to be found with or without PFD. Remember, we are talking about offshore sailing. However, if wearing a PFD and a PLB, at least you can hope to be found if you're lucky, and there are resources within reach of less than 24 hours. Without any of these equipments and technology, you are most likely shark food and never to be found. This is the brutal truth. Most offshore sailors have crew, and some only sail as a couple. And there are many theories for how to find your crew that has fallen overboard. Please note, this is not a video about best practice for mob situations. This is only to point you in some directions, understanding the importance of engine and why it saves lives. Based on a significant numbers of search and rescue callouts, I can assure you it's a huge difference between theories and reality. Wind, waves and ocean currents are key elements, not only complicating things, sometimes they even makes it impossible to find the person that has fallen overboard. And even if you have a satellite communication, you have pressed the mob button on your navigation and even called for assistance, you need a lot of luck on your side when being offshore. Remember, a helicopter cannot reach you if you are far offshore, and there might not be any resources within range for hours, if not even days. The reality, ladies and gentlemen, your engine and the capacity will in most cases, in combination with some training and experience, be the difference between a fatal outcome or happy ending, even if being smart having all the safety equipment available. It doesn't matter how great sailor you believe you are, claiming being able to do this without engine, even further from reality to perform a search pattern. While you look away for a split second to adjust sails might be the last chance you had to spot the head in the seas. Just let this sink in. And I can assure you, if in a situation like this, it's not unnormal having panic seeing your loved one or crew member disappearing, meaning you are also more likely to do mistakes with your sails, complicating things even more. The ocean currents are strong, wind not on your side, and waves complicate things. Even a person in the water with a smart find can be out of range for transmission to your plotter in less than 1 hour. Offshore sailing is an amazing experience. Even though it can be exhausting at times, it's still something I love the most. Still, I can't stress enough that it's a totally different ballgame than coastal sailing. So make sure to not listening to people defending stupid and instead search for knowledge and understanding. I hope I have given you some things to reflect about in this video, and as a final I'm gonna share some of the equipment I have on board and consider as important for offshore sailing. I'm getting there step by step, little by little. So if you watched all the way to here, I want to thank you so much, and if you haven't already, I will be very happy to see you subscribe. And if you want to support the work I do with all the effort I put into my videos and you appreciate it, you could even consider to become a patron. Then it's not much more to say than sail wisely and enjoy life.